So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Should anybody still buy the iPhone XS? That is the aim of today's video. Now let me remind you, there's a few things you absolutely will not get if you decide to pick this up now. Even though it's got that premium iPhone X look, a few things you're not going to get here is number one, no 5G on board. Number two, there's no ultra wide angle camera. Number three, there's no macro capabilities. Number four, there's no 4K 60 on the selfie camera. So if you're a selfie, video vlogger or stuff like that, you're only going to get up to HD 60 on the front. In addition to that, there's no larger iPhone battery in here. So this doesn't have the largest capacity cell, but that doesn't mean that even with all those things not on there, it's essentially not a pro phone. That's all it really means. But is it really still good for anybody? Let me talk about different areas and decide if this is even something you should consider at this point. So keep in mind, when this device did launch, it did launch at $1,000 for this phone. Now you can get the iPhone XS used around $200 to $350 depending on the storage capacity you go for. Do you hear what I said? That's full price, $200 to $350. However, it is 4 years, just about to be 4 years old now, so it is quite old at this point, which could tell you why it's that price. But at the same time, you're still getting to feel $1,000 phone in your hand for a really low price point at this point. So let's begin by talking about the build and the body. I can just tell you right now, it's classic. It does look a little bit dated on the rear at this point, and that's mostly because of the launch of the iPhone 12, which squared off the edges. Now this curved look, it just looks like an iPhone 10. It looks rather old on the back. However, in the front, it doesn't look super old at all because Apple still has the notch game going on right now. So most people would have to do a double take to see if you have an iPhone 11, iPhone 12, 13, if they just look at the front with the notch and stuff like that. So the front doesn't look archaic like the SE 2022, but the back definitely looks a little bit older and not really up to date. However, this phone still gives you a very premium feel at the budget price point. This still feels like $1,000 like phone in the hand. It still has stainless steel edges around the rim. It still has a very nice glass back here, IP68 dust to water resistance. It just feels like a premium phone still, even though you can no longer pay a premium price for this device or even expect to get a premium sale if you wanted to get rid of it. Ergonomically though, this phone just feels really good in the hand. This curved edge right here at the 5.8 inch size, not too big, not too small. This phone just felt right. It was one of my favorites to one hand. And yeah, it's not as easy to one hand as a mini phone, but the size was great to me. I really missed this 5.8 inch screen. Some people really prefer the 6.1, but this is a really good size for a lot of people, I feel like. So I really have to mention that I just think it's a major pro. Moving on to the display of this device, and I gotta say the display on here has aged gracefully. We have an OLED display on board. It gets well bright enough for most people, 625 nits. It can get a little bit brighter when you do take it outdoors. In addition to that, overall you just have really nice colors and saturation compared to some of the older LCDs. Of course, True Tone was on board, and this was their second edition after the iPhone X, so they did make the color look a little bit better than even that phone. So overall, I gotta say, just the display quality is gonna give you a pretty good experience. If you're looking to have a good color profiles and you want to edit photos and stuff and watch videos and movies, I think overall you're gonna be extremely happy with this. There's just really not a lot to say. It has OLED, it's still up to date. It doesn't really feel dated. It's got 458 pixels per inch on here. 3D touch is still on here. Let's not talk about that. It's still faster to do those press-ins than even the newer iPhones. True Tone, oleophobic coating, if that didn't wear off if you buy a used one. It's got what you need, seriously does. And the bezels really don't look that dated either, because this was one of the thinner bezels iPhones. Not quite as good as the newer ones, but still better than like the iPhone XR, the iPhone 11. So bezels are not super thick either here on the edges. Overall, a great looking display. One thing that's nice about all iPhones is that you really get long software support. You're not going to be behind any software updates this year or even probably next year. So if you bought this now, you're still up to date. That's pretty cool. There's not a lot of Android phones from 2018 you can buy right now that are still up to date. And that's what makes even used iPhones a really good purchase for a lot of people. And with all this hardware here, this is arguably a better purchase for some people than even the current SE. Even though it has a much better processor, you don't get the nice OLED display, you don't get a dual camera. I mean, there's still a lot on offer here. At that price point, it's pretty ridiculous. And nothing about the software really feels different. You still have your app library, which operates exactly the same as the 13. You still have the ability to add widgets. It's not like they really held back on the features, and they're gonna operate just fine as well. So you can see right there the battery percentage. The iOS experience is identical. So this was the year that Apple really started to step things up, I think, in the processor game. The Apple A12 Apple A12 Bionic right here, 2.49 gigahertz, 4 gigabytes of RAM. And this phone still runs fantastic for the day-to-day use. As you can see right here, there's not really a big issue with opening applications. As a matter of fact, the day-to-day iOS experience doesn't feel any different from a current 13, honestly. So this one has held the test of time when it comes to just kind of making good use of the performance, you know, that it was given the A12 Bionic. Also, 4 gigabytes of RAM will allow it to pretty much multitask, not too different from, you know, a current 4 gig of RAM iPhone. Overall, it runs fine. It actually runs pretty good and still feels like a premium performer. So that's really good. Just the performance alone, really strong here for the iPhone XS. This was also the year that they decided to bring more storage to the iPhone. So you could see, you could find yourself an unlocked 512 gigabyte iPhone XS for $294. I mean, yeah, that's not super cheap by today's standards, but still, $294, 512 gigs? That's a lot of space if you're looking for a used iPhone. So really not bad amount of storage on here. This is the lowest model I believe I got, because I went with the higher XS Max model. Yeah, 64 gigs. But having that option is still pretty cool. Yeah, we're at 1 terabyte now, but for the time and even today, that's still a lot of storage. So 512 gigs is very solid. And because you have that storage, you'll be able to take a lot more photos, and that brings me on to the camera. By the way, the space gray version is a little bit of a grease magnet, as you can see. You might want to go with the gold version if you don't want to see as many fingerprints, or the silver one especially. Let's go over here to the camera. Now the camera is very solid on this phone. Just like the iPhone XR still has a good camera, this one also gives you a telephoto and a true dedicated telephoto lens. So when you do zoom in, you get really good quality on this iPhone XS still. The only thing about this XS that really is in need of an upgrade, and it got it already, was the front-facing camera. So if you're looking for yourself to have the best vlogging camera, this one's not it, but it's still pretty adequate if you're gonna do some 1080p video. Man, is the XS's camera still super usable. So let's bring it on to the battery on the iPhone XS, and you can see I definitely didn't use this as much as my XS, so I kept my health up there 100%. But when you're looking for these phones, if you're buying one used, make sure you don't get one with super low battery health. It'll probably ruin the experience. 2658 milliamp hour battery on here. You can see we already dropped a couple percent just in a few minutes. This phone is not going to be your super long lasting phone. However, I found it to always make it through the day for me when I'm, just kind of doing regular tasks. This phone, I would end the day around 15 to 20%, sometimes 23%. If I was light on it, 32%, but I was never like up there in the 50s or 60s by the end of the day. Again, one con of this phone is no 5G, but one pro is because it runs 4G LTE, it's not sipping or draining the battery as much. So the newer iPhones actually need a larger capacity simply because they're running a more power hungry 5G. So this phone still adequate enough for the day-to-day, provided that you buy one with enough battery health to support that. So overall, I would say battery just average on the XS. Even to this day, it's still just kind of average. One thing that's pretty cool is for just this price of 200 or like $300, you get Face ID. And why do I say that? Because Face ID is a really strong security feature for that kind of money. You're getting the system that you don't really find on any other phone, and also you can unlock a lot of applications with that. You can use this with Apple Pay. So this phone has a really strong biometric security system for this money. Pretty decent phone call quality in here, but you have to remember this doesn't have the greatest modems, so I found the signal strength not to be amazing. That's one of the cons of this phone. Provided you're in a suburban area, you're out in the country and stuff like that, away from the urban metropolitan areas, this one might give you a little trouble. in really good areas like where there's a lot of cell phone towers and stuff like that. No problems, it will do just fine. But overall, the iPhone XS, should anyone still buy this? And I could think of a couple of people that can, like maybe somebody who's trying to get an iPhone at a cheaper price point, but that person also wants something a little more nicer looking. This could be a decent option as a backup. It could be a decent option. You want to try iOS, it could be a decent option. And for somebody who's always wanted that premium feeling iPhone, but they don't want it, they want it at a budget price point, they could go for this or a XS Max right now and be good, rock out for a year or two until they get their funds up to get the newer iPhone. This could be a great option for you as well. When I got it, I paid like $1,200 for this phone, or like $1,000. So I'm kind of like feeling the hurt right now that this is only $200. I basically lost money on that one. For those of you who just have to have the latest and greatest, you probably don't give a rat's, about this one. But let me know your thoughts on the XS. Did you have one? Do you recommend it now? Do you think it's a great deal? I want to hear what you got to say about this one down below in the comments. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.